this young. This is real.
Oh, it's weird being on the other side now. 1 minute.
Are you live already?
Yeah.
Hi, Facebook world. What's up, guys?
Oh, now you are. 40 seconds. Yeah, it's new mic.
Don't forget the house we went to.
20 seconds.
Reach out.
Push it.
What's going on, Rochester? You're listening to Be the Change Radio. Neffy.
Chris.
Danakins.
Donnie.
And we have special guests that we're so excited about. We have Monroe County Sheriff Todd Baxter.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good.
And we have Matt Barnes, Officer Matt Barnes from Fairport.
How you doing, Stephanie?
Good. I'm so glad you guys are here. We're just going to jump right into things. Yes. We're very excited with what we've seen going on. Okay. The community wants to know, what is the Heroin Task Force?
Well, it's basically it's a group of police officers get together every morning. They look at intelligence that occurred in the last 24, 48 hours with overdoses, whether they're overdoses that a Narcan was used or an overdose that results in death. But we're looking at the whole picture every morning and painting that picture. And then we actually have dedicated police officers to go out and to address those issues. We used to wait 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months for data. Now we're getting it within 24, 48 hours. So we're reacting to it the next morning. And we might go out in a proactive mode, law enforcement, go out with undercovers, or we go out with nonprofits and saturate a neighborhood that might be, had 2 or 3 overdoses last night or experience. It's not just all about enforcement. Although we're good at that and we'll do that, but there's other ways to solve the problem too.
Right.
That's awesome.
So we're talking about real time, like we can find information out real time, and that's huge. There's bad batches that pop up, and that's going to help figure out how to find them and what to do.
Yeah, the intervention in someone's life, right? So if they've survived 1 or 2 overdoses, we know if that cycle keeps on going, we're going to lose that person sooner or later statistically. So the sooner we can jump in the middle of that cycle and break them out of it, I call it, I probably shouldn't say this to the sheriff, but I call it kidnapping sometimes. We can grab this person and kidnap them and drag them anywhere we can. Sometimes jail's the most applicable place. In vet court, or some kind of treatment court's an appropriate place. Our jail is doing wonderful things when it comes to rehab and trying to get people on the right foot. But sometimes we'll bring them down to the local drop-off center and get them someplace safe, get them someplace secure. Or we call our friends in the nonprofit world, and sometimes we'll take them across outside of Monroe County and take them to a bed, an inpatient bed, whatever it's calling for that day. The idea is we know the next morning, we know the players, we know who's involved, we know the dealers, we know the people that overdosed, we know their family names. We're gathering all that stuff the next day and trying to jump in the middle of that cycle.
Right.
That's such a beautiful thing, man, because it's been such an issue here in the county, in Rochester especially, so I think that's amazing that you guys are doing that.
That's great.
Okay, so how does the Good Samaritan law work? Because I know a lot of people, you're using with someone, you're already doing something illegal, and then your friend drops and you're terrified. What do you do? How exactly does that work?
Yeah, so Stephanie, the Good Samaritan law, I understand why people would be hesitant to call 911 sometimes. Obviously, if there's illegal activity afoot, but you're participating in, let's say, a certain drug, and the cohort that you're doing the drugs with happens to need medical attention or police attention, this Samaritan law protects you, you know, and the reason it is we want people to call. We want people to call for help. We want to give that person that needs assistance the proper assistance and the proper aid. And this Good Samaritan law protects people under certain parameters to call 911 and to request that assistance without getting arrested or in trouble.
That's what that guy was saying today.
Which one?
The one I was talking to in front of the store.
Oh, okay.
Remember I was
Yeah.
telling you a story?
We were so we were working outside at 821 and that's where we do our outreach from. We hand out lunches and clothing, and there were some guys who were talking there, and they said they're constantly calling the police because they're constantly seeing people drop over from bags, bad batches. We were actually out there today, and we saw a lady fall.
Wow.
And these guys were walking her out from the field, and we went and checked on her, and they're holding her up. They're saying she's okay, and she, and you know, it's not like she was passed out. She was still, you know,
Coherent.
talking and coherent,
But she couldn't walk.
right, such scary situations.
Yeah, and Stephanie, just to throw it out to the listeners out there, you know, don't take our word for it. It's in black and white. You're welcome to go to the New York Department of Health website. It's health.newyork.gov /overdose. You can read the New York State Good Samaritan law for yourself. You can understand what it entails.
Awesome.
That's so cool.
That's really cool.
And you know, we were just joking around. Chris goes, "There's cops in the room with us."
We get that a lot.
I am like terrified right now, just to let y'all know.
Sergeant Barn gets that at home, by the way.
We get that a lot. And Stephanie, you've known me for a long time, so you
Oh
understand.
my gosh, yeah.
It's good to be on the same side. You know what I mean? It's good to be in a room with you guys and not have anything to worry about. You know?
Yeah, very,
Absolutely.
very true.
Right. Oh my gosh, yeah.
You know,
And-
and I know we've been joking about it, but that lies part of the problem, what we're joking about. You know, we consider ourselves the good guys.
Yes.
And that's what we want to project to the community, too. You know, cops care as much as anyone out there.
Right.
We want to assist you guys, you know, in your times of need.
Right.
And it is terrible that we're thought of, and I understand why that thought comes about, but the realization we want to be thought as the good guys. We think of ourselves the good guys, and we want other people to think of us the good guys.
Right.
Like we were pulled in, and I saw the Fairport police, and my heart like stopped because every time I see it, it just stops. I get nervous.
It's
hard to talk.
it's a completely
wondering.
and it's awesome because when
He circled the parking lot like 4 times.
and that is one of the huge problems because when you're in active addiction, you don't trust anybody, you don't trust yourself, and it's hard reaching out, especially to people you know who will put you in jail. But it's so nice when you do find a cop and you're like, I need help, and they take you. So we were actually just talking about that, the program where people can call cops and say, you know, I'm struggling. I'm either actively using or I just overdosed. So how does that work? Do they just call and you guys come pick them up and take them to like open access or gates to recovery?
Yeah, any of the above, you know, or we'll call upon friends. Now that we have the open command post, the lieutenant that's in charge of that command post has a phone 24/7, and if a law enforcement officer can't find a bed or find a resource for that person that's trying to get out of that addictive cycle, they'll just call upon the lieutenant's phone, and he has a Rolodex, if you will, of resources out there. I'm sure you guys know Dave Attridge, and you
Yep.
know,
Yes.
Dave is our go-to person most often. We'll call him and say, hey, you might not have the capacity, but point us in the right direction with a nonprofit or open access, or where else can we bring this person? The law enforcement officers not right now realize that we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem. Again, when appropriate, we'll make an arrest. And sometimes, you know, we have parents call us and say, please, you know, lock our son or daughter up, right? We're scared to death that they're going to lose
Right.
their life. And that's appropriate sometimes, but you know, everybody's been trained in Monroe County across all the jurisdictions that there's other opportunities for people, especially if they wanna, you know, if they're asking for help, maybe that's the best time in their life to start that treatment.
Right. And
Go ahead.
you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I know for me, like that window was so small. Like
Right.
I woke up and I was like, damn, I want to get help today. And I believe if Stephanie wouldn't have reached out to me prior to that, a little while prior to that, and that help wasn't available in that 24-hour span, or even maybe less, that 12-hour span, I don't know if I'd be where I'm sitting today. You know what I mean? Because
Same
it's
thing.
so easy to get caught back up in that addictive cycle. And for me, when I was out there using, like, that lifestyle was almost attracting. Like, I accepted it for what it was, as horrible as it
When you
was.
saw that girl
And
today.
I was like, I thought I was okay. You know, I'm living behind a shed at McDonald's. And, you know, it's just crazy to me, but I'm glad that the help was available when I decided I wanted it, because if it wasn't, who knows where I would be at today.
Yeah, God forbid they're not there for you, right?
Right.
At that
Yeah.
moment.
And just so you guys know, that's good to hear. And that's what we want. We want people reaching out, and we want people asking for help. And just so you guys know, the sheriff mentioned a couple minutes ago that a lieutenant is in charge, has a phone available 24 hours a day.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so what he's done, he's empowered people. You know, I'm not going to say a lower rank, but not an upper echelon rank in the sheriff's department. You know, a mid-level manager. He's given that person, that individual, that drug czar, the power to make decisions, and that's what's part of it. It's not just a matter of calling a sheriff that's going to call a deputy chief, that's going to call a commander to do this, or to ask a sergeant to do this. They've empowered the people, and that's all law enforcement agencies here in Monroe County are starting to think of this differently. You know, the opioid crisis is here. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I hope everyone understands that. But in that process, we want to obviously put together things like the command post and the task force to try to battle this this terrible, I'll call it a pandemic. I think it's worse than an epidemic right now.
Yeah, it's very strong.
I agree.
Basically today I was we were doing the cleanups and everything, and I had a homeless guy actually come up to me, and we gave him a lunch, and he's like, you know, a lot of people don't help us junkies. And I said, excuse me, hold on a second. First of all, you're not a junkie, you're a human being. And the gentleman in front of me just started bawling in tears. I started crying a little bit too. And that felt really, really good to do something like that.
Yeah, there's people at the end they want to, and that's what frustrates me with the numbers and the statistics, and you know, and I push the numbers as hard as I can, obviously, just to wake people up. But the fact is, each one of those numbers has a human body at the end of it, has a human person, a soul, and we really got to stay away from the numbers sometimes. And the other day, I was asked during a press conference, what, you know, this command post and all this resources and daily intelligence briefings, what's going to be your measure of success? And everybody had a real hard time answering, because no one wants to answer a question that, you know, probably for the next couple of years we're going to fail. If we're just looking at numbers, we're going to fail. This thing is trending so fast, so far in front of us.
Man.
It's going to take a couple of years to catch up and stabilize, let alone do anything, you know, drastically to reduce the numbers. And so no one likes to be part of a losing team, I guess. But when you look at it, you know, if we're out there, we're saving 4 or 5 human bodies, human beings next year. How do you measure that, right? And
Right,
so,
you can't.
Yeah, so the numbers might still go up, but how many did we save?
Right.
You know, so
Right,
really,
and that's the most
how many
important
right.
thing.
So break that cycle, you know, do it every option available to a law enforcement officer, to an ED, a nurse, emergency room nurse, to a social service worker. They got to have all the tools in their tool. And then we can, you know, but, you know, that brings me to one more point I got to really make now that I got the microphone in front of me is, you know, I call it shutting off the well. You know, we got all these wonderful nonprofits. We got law enforcement helping. We got emergency room doctors going to the same meetings as us now and talking about what they're going to do when they release someone from an ED. Those are all things we should have been doing 5 years ago. We all agree with that. But, you know, we're creating more, I hope this isn't offensive, we're creating more people that are addicted every day than we can keep up with, obviously. Society's losing this battle. If this was a war, we're losing. Until we shut off the well. So we could do all the law enforcement, we could do all the recovery. We got to find out how to educate and scare that crap out of people and wake people up and find out how when you fight a fire on an oil well, you got to shut off the well first. You can put all the water on you want, right?
Right.
And we got to shut off this well, and we got to clamp it down hard, and then we can do, you know, the catch up and the mop up. But man, this is utterly incredible. I've been a law enforcement officer for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like this. And we really got to start talking different, openly, publicly. You know, in our churches, in our Boy Scout clubs, in our American Legion posts. We got to start talking. This isn't everybody's backyard.
Right. There's always somebody in their family that has this problem.
You can't go anywhere in our society, right? And people are starting to wake up and talk like freely about it. And that's the first thing I think we needed to do is stop the denial.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And, you know, it's getting younger and younger kids
Yes,
in their
is.
teens.
Yeah.
And that's horrifying. It had to be a few months ago, but in Irondequoit, there was an overdose and the kid was 12. My son's 11. And I had put Jacob in some real crappy situations. He pretty much raised my daughter, my son, my 11-year-old, from the time he was 9 until 10. He was no longer than that. I'm lying. He raised her for quite a few years because me and my husband were just so stuck in our addiction. And it was just horrible.
Jake's a strong guy. That's why.
Yeah.
He is.
Very
He's
strong.
awesome.
Yeah. And it's you guys talking about it with us. That's so huge. When people who are struggling in active addiction or people who are fighting in recovery to stay sober can talk to someone who has a more powerful voice than us and can be like, this is what we need to do, and we can join together and do it. That's so huge.
I think that's one of the most important things you had said was just unifying, getting it out there in our churches and our community as much as we can. Like for me, I work a 12-step anonymous program, but as far as my personal recovery goes, like I try not to be anonymous because people need to know that recovery is possible, and people need to know that it's affecting.
I got chances.
Yeah, it's not just affecting a certain group of people. It's affecting everyone, all walks of life, all communities. It doesn't matter. And it's killing people. And like you said, I don't think it needs to be quiet anymore. We really need to stand up. We need to unite. I think unity and love are the two best weapons we have against this right now. And with the help of other things, resources and all that, of course. But as far as like recovery advocacy goes, I think that's very important. Having peers and people that were
Peer
in the
advocates.
streets with these people, like for me, when I go out on Sundays, I love it so much because I see people that I lived in abandoned houses with, that I used with, you know what I mean? And they see me doing what I'm doing now, and it's like, it almost lights up their eyes, man, and it makes it, I cry some nights, about it because they're like, damn, Chris, you look like you have a life now. And I'm like, I do, man. And, it was a struggle. I struggled with it for 15 years, and I was in and out of recovery. I never truly wanted it because I didn't know how to live just being myself. I couldn't be comfortable being me. Until this time, I did some serious work, and I just experienced enough pain to make me willing to look at my insides and what was driving me to run from myself for so long, But, yeah, unity, I think, is one of the most important things.
It's powerful.
Now, and it's spreading out. So you're an officer in Fairport, Matt Barnes. Can I call you Matt?
Call me whatever you want.
Okay. I'm like,
Matty.
I don't know if
Easy,
I should. And now, what are you seeing out in the suburbs?
That this epidemic or pandemic or this sickness knows no boundaries. And if you think Fairport's any different than Clinton Avenue or Conkey or Hudson or anything else, you're wrong. And I think every suburban police department, obviously the city of Rochester, the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, not just necessarily here in Metro Rochester, but Buffalo and Syracuse and across the state, has the exact same problem. And it literally is a huge, huge problem. We're trying to get hold of it. It's going to take us a while. We can't do it by ourselves. Sitting here, talking in studio with the sheriff, myself, and you guys, I think is a positive thing. I think that moves
It's a
towards the
huge
right
step.
direction.
Huge step.
Yeah, I don't think it knows no boundaries.
Right. And so you actually brought up a good point that I want to bring up. You were talking about how the crack epidemic happened years ago. And
yeah, the guy I was listening to, it was a comedian. I can't remember his name. And
Mark Lundholm, maybe?
it was a couple months ago, and he said, it's funny. He goes, in the 80s, he goes, no one cared about the crack epidemic because it was a basically urban problem. Now here we have the opioid crisis, and now it's an urban and suburban and a statewide and nationwide problem. And it seems like people care now because it affects everyone. And like you were talking a couple minutes ago, it knows no boundaries, and it doesn't matter if you're black, white, or Hispanic, Asian. It
There's
doesn't
no
matter what gender
discrimination.
you are. It affects
Right.
everyone and every family at some level.
right. Oh, so it's just really hard to see some of the stuff, and we went through it, and I can't imagine some of the stuff that you guys see. Do you get burnout? Like, you got to see a lot. It's got to be intense because Sundays are pretty intense for us, and we're not going out there daily yet. But how is that? How do you get through that?
Well, first of all, I think the numbers are gone so fast, so far, so high that it's overwhelming systems, whether it's a law enforcement system, an emergency medical system, the emergency departments. We are being literally overwhelmed. It's taken us away from other things that we could be doing also, like preventive type patrols and things like that. We are now treating an overdose different than we did just a year ago. You know, we're starting to collect intelligence. We're starting to collect crime scene evidence, and that's taking more time. It's the right thing to do, but it's taking more time out of the law enforcement officer's day. And there's only so much. It's called capacity. So we are adjusting, and we should be adjusting the way we're doing this because we're losing so many people, as we spoke about earlier. But it's really overwhelming to the whole system. Let alone, you know, you go into the emergency rooms and people are, you know, waiting 2, 3, 4 deep just from an overdose. And then you got the other people in there with the flu and everything else. The systems are really being pushed to capacity. And I think that's why everybody, like the sergeant said, you know, people are starting to talk freely and because it's all over, like the community said, it's all over, it's every community. But also I think people are starting to wake up like, hey, we're getting, like I said earlier, if this is a war, we're losing. And no one likes to be on a losing team. And we need to really step up the preventive maintenance on this. An ounce of prevention in this case is worth a ton, you know, on the other side of it. And I think all the system players are catching up. The courts, probation, parole, the police, emergency, everybody that's involved in the systems of this are going, you know what, we can't keep on doing the same old, we're losing.
And Stephanie, just so you know, the buzzwords we've used a couple times is the task force and command post. And for you guys that aren't aware, a command post, basically title or terminology, came from the military. They set up a command post during times of war. They would send their troops out into theater. They would form a command post. They would have different variations of the command post, different elements, facets of it. You know, an S1 through S4.
Right.
You know, it would be intelligence from supply to everything else. And that's what the sheriff brought on board. And that was one of his pleas when he was running for sheriff, you know, is he wanted to obviously start a command post or a task force or expand the task force into a command post.
Definitely need one of them.
Right.
And that's how serious we're taking this. Obviously, we're at war with this crisis. We are. Not just us, the police. I'm saying as a community.
Community, yeah.
Absolutely, we are.
Everybody in whole.
Yeah, and we're being very careful that it's not a war on drugs, right? We know, you know, that philosophy. And again, we're good at law enforcement. That's what we do real well. And we don't mind locking people up and putting them in jail, especially the people that are dealing this poison, right? We don't mind putting homicide charges in. But we also realize, you know, I'm challenging the incident commander of the command post. You know, let's see if we can someday 50% of the work that's coming out of the command post every morning is non-law enforcement. It's proactive. It's in the neighborhoods. It's getting our DARE officers that are teaching wonderful programs to 5th graders to now teach 12th graders before they head out the door to college or to others.
Need that.
You know, yeah, things like that. It's our average age of death last year in Monroe County was 35.
That's crazy.
Oh my
Right?
gosh.
So DARE is wonderful, but it's 5th graders, you know. So how are we getting the 35-year-olds? Where's our DARE program for not the students? Where's our DARE program for the PTA?
Right.
You know, how are we getting them
Rehab.
35-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on a preventive mode,
Outpatient.
you know, exactly, to prevent. And so those are the conversations we're having at the command post every morning. Like, how do we change the whole dynamic here?
Right.
And just as the President of the United States receives a presidential daily briefing, right, a PDB. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the federal government, but every single day, every threat along the world is summed up into a couple-minute brief to him, and he's given that, and that's real-time info, all right? So we can stay on top of stuff. That's what the sheriff and the other chiefs of police around Metro Rochester have formed. That's what they want. They want real-time information to try to combat the problem. They're getting those presidential daily briefs that update every single day so they can stay on top of stuff, so they can come up with the best course of action to take.
That's
for the
so
next
cool.
24, 48 hours. This is not long-term stuff. Let's go hit something for the next 24, 48 hours, measure that, report back, and then we'll give you more tasks as you go back out. I got to give Sandra Dorley the plug on the intelligence part of this. The daily briefings are based on data, and she developed a form last summer that every law enforcement officer in Monroe County now fills out every time they go to an OD. It's a suspected OD, right? Whether it's his death or not, it's suspected. We're not waiting for a medical examiner to come back 6 months from now and declaring what caused this death. We're simply filling out a form. Who was there? What time of day? What were the color of the bags? What were the marking on the bags? Is this person OD'd in the past? Is there a cell phone involved? All that good. And it's going right off into the database that next morning. We're working off that information.
I was wondering what you guys are doing.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so
Right.
When I OD'd, and it was in November, they found my body, and they said I was dead for at least an hour and a half, and that's impossible. But they hit me with the Narcan. I was in the hospital, but nobody came to investigate or tell me anything about it.
Right.
So I don't even know how I thought I got in a car accident.
So now now we have your picture up on a screen every morning. We know who your Facebook friends are. We know because we want to get to know you as a person and find out how we can break that cycle, intervene in that cycle somewhere, somehow.
Well,
Right.
and you had mentioned about the DARE program. My daughter is 17, and she said that there is no DARE program at her high school right now.
Yeah,
So we need to get them back in the schools.
and build up on that 5th grade. There is a 5th grade program. So
Right.
where is it in 10th grade? Where is it in 11th
Right,
and 12th grade?
exactly, and that's what she
Absolutely.
said.
Those are conversations we're having
And
right
she's
now.
trained on Narcan, so
Good.
that's awesome.
Right, and you know, parents get. Now I tell my kids everything, but a lot of parents get really uncomfortable when you talk about people shooting up or stuff like that. But I think they need to hear that. I think they need to hear not only the DARE program, but they need to hear from addicts in recovery who have become homeless, who, you know, thought I could just try this one time and see where it led them. And it is a scary talk and it is hard, but if they don't know all the gory facts,
I agree.
You're going to be
You gotta
curious
scare 'em.
about it.
Yeah,
Gotta scare 'em.
absolutely. You got to put the fear in them.
Just like scared straight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
there you go, the Scared Straight
And
program.
I don't want to belittle the DARE program. I met with my 6 DARE officers the other day. They do wonderful work.
Oh, yeah.
And I told them, I remember I went to 30 school on Otis Street in the city of Rochester. I remember a van came around. I don't know who's running the program, but they showed me this spoon, a teaspoon that was like bent in half and a needle coming out of it, right? And it's like, and all I remember is I still have that vivid memory in my face. You talk about scared straight. I was like, that's one thing I will never, ever, ever do.
Right.
It got me, you know. So. We just want that building block approach beyond that.
Right.
You know, again, I'll go back to the number 35. 35 years old. It was the average death in 2017. So we just got to make sure we're penetrating into those communities too as deep as possible, and if you will, scared straight with those folks too. Somehow
Right.
they're becoming, you know, addicted.
Well, it got me scared straight.
And we're very proud of you, Donnie.
Amen.
Thank you.
That's
Yes, we
awesome.
are. We are. I thought we stopped to get coffee on the way to take him to detox. And he's like, I got to use the bathroom. And I'm like, he's going to freaking run. I knew it. I would have ran.
No, I wanted this. I needed it.
We are so proud
And
of you.
I'm glad I
We
had
are very
Stephanie and
proud of
everybody
you.
behind me. Because without it, I probably wouldn't be here right now, wouldn't be talking on the radio, wouldn't be able to get any advice to anybody, or even helping out the next person. I just do what I have to do, and I'm going to just keep moving forward on it, and I'm going to be the change.
Yay.
There you go. Amen.
So we're going to take a quick break. And I had to play this song. You guys are going to love it. But we'll be right back. Keep tuning in. You're listening to Be the Change, Addiction Awareness and Support.
Oh, here we go.
I had to. Did it die? This one.
That was a good way to end that, though. Right?
Did you ask them, or are you going to ask them how dealers can help them?
Yes, I will.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
On the agenda.
Who was? Paul was on the call, not Matt. Donnie's on his phone. Dave.
Bad boys.
We had to play this.
What you gonna do?
106.3. My phone is probably going to die before the end of the show. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Ralph. Hi, Ralph. Cassidy, Ryan, Joshy. I love your face. I can't wait to see you.
Invite Marty Norman.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Mark, Derek, Michael, Jan, Brandon, Karina, Thomas. Hey, Mama.
How many people are watching?
A bunch. Right now, there's 4. Oh, he was just texting me. Tell him I was just texting him. My phone's frozen.
Hello? Hello? Call my cell phone number. I got a new cell phone. I don't have your number. My phone got fucked up. Oh, just call mine. 585
Mom said Josh is watching. We love you. He's doing so good. Thank you, Lisa. It's probably gonna die. Just let it die when it dies. 1 minute. Bring us back in. Say you're listening to Be the Change, Addiction Awareness, Support, and Recovery Radio. Do the commercial.
What's up, Rochester? We're back. You're listening to Be the Change, Addiction Awareness, Support, and Recovery Radio, 106.3 Rochester Free Radio FM. And we'd like to give thanks to 7 Seas Home Improvements. If you would like to bring all your remodeling dreams to life, look no further than 7 Seas Home Improvements. Do everything from basements to bathrooms to plumbing, right down to the plumbing. That's the number 7, letter C's, Home Improvements. Call Chad Everett.
585-613-1548.
Yay! Okay, so we did a poll last week on Facebook about what people, a big topic people in Rochester wanted us to definitely talk about. And I think it was in 2016, Miguel, who runs Hope, what is it called?
Miguel from St. Michael's?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think
Project Hope and Project Clean.
There you go. Perfect.
He did a documentary about the open air drug market in Rochester. How do we make that change?
So I'll start. So St. Michael's, I believe, is on Clinton Avenue, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that used to be my old beat. I started in the city 257 beat, I think that is.
that's why you look
beat.
familiar.
Yeah. So St. Michael's, it happens to fall within Clinton section, of the city of Rochester Police Department. And how do you make that change from open air drug markets? That's tough. I think you consider, what we initially said about the command post. You find out where it's coming from. It goes back to basics of drug investigation: where the supply is coming from, who's supplying it, and how they're dealing it. Remember, we still have to act under the United States Constitution. We can flood the streets with cops. They're not going to do it in front of us. They're going to wait till we leave. And the open air drug market. There are things they can do, but I think it's a multifaceted, approach. And I'll let the sheriff extend on that.
I remember when Clinton, they had their curfew at a certain time. It was a couple years ago, and there was nobody allowed on the street. Not one single person after 10 o'clock.
So that goes back to, is that constitutional?
That old Constitution jump.
That little piece of paper we all hold so dearly. And, and honestly, what makes our country great, right?
Right.
Yes.
So,
Exactly.
I do know there's a problem, but there's also a Constitution we all adore. Hopefully you adore it.
Absolutely. So, and continuing on with Hope and the initiatives down in Clinton Avenue, probably about 20 years ago, there was a theory in law enforcement called the broken window theory. And it has a negative connotation to it nowadays with certain demographics. But the idea was that if you have a neighborhood and you have a broken window in the neighborhood, you don't do anything to fix that. Next thing you're going to have is 2 broken windows. Then you're going to have some graffiti, and then you're going to have
That is so true.
no one cares about the street lights that go out, and all of a sudden you got a neighborhood that's in decline. The broken window theory. So if we can work on the broken window as law enforcement, we have an access to the local Department of Public Works, and we can simply call in a work order and get a window fixed or graffiti off the wall or get street lights. And that's what the city is doing down in Clinton Avenue. I think they do a wonderful job. As you were down there doing the cleanup, they have abilities now just calling work orders, and they cut back a ton of shrubbery. They trim back hacked trees. They demolished houses down there. That all falls under, if you will, the broken window theory, and that also gives hope to the neighborhood, right? It gives hope that there's, and we'll go down. We'll saturate the heck out of it with law enforcement and stabilize it, but we have to pull out sooner or later. You don't want a Gestapo state, where you're living,
Right.
So we're going to leave sooner or later in that overbearing presence, but that helps stabilize then who's going to come in and backfill for us.
Community service.
Community service, right?
Absolutely.
Neighborhood groups, neighborhood watches, things like that. Tight-knit neighborhoods, streetlights that work, graffitis off the walls. All those things are as part of that whole HOPE initiative, that it's your neighborhood. We'll help as law enforcement, but really, how can we stabilize it for you and then let you get a stronghold in there and then you take it back over?
Right.
Taking pride in where you live and how you live, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Area beautification.
Right. And it's crazy. We actually got a tip from a family who don't have transportation, so they walked to the corner store on Avenue D in Lake Joseph, I think it was.
Yeah, it was.
So they reached out and they were like, we found a bunch of needles. Oh, we have kids. We don't want to pick them up. So we went there today and picked them up. But just walking down from street to street, we find so many.
It's ridiculous.
And the community is scared. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know, should I let my kids play outside? Half the time they're saying no because there's needles in their backyard and they're terrified. And so what do you tell them to do? Like, because there's only so many cops. There's only so many people who go out and do this. How can they take care of it to protect themselves?
Well, first of all, organize. All momentum occurs with organized people that come together, right? And that's what we were just talking about in the break. Momentum, it's starting to occur. You see people openly talking about this pandemic, as the sergeant keeps on saying. You see people openly talking about it in obituaries of how their loved ones have passed, right? You see, news media talking about it daily sometimes, and the President of the United States coming out and finally making a statement about it. But at the grassroots effort, form that neighborhood group and challenge the systems to come in and help you clean up your neighborhood. And then you have a system to backfill for that, to stabilize and hold that neighborhood. Call wonderful people like you that aren't afraid to come down and pick up the needles. They're definitely afraid of it. They don't know, right?
Definitely
they don't know.
afraid.
But people that have never experienced what you guys have experienced, they would never touch that needle in a million years.
So true.
Right.
But now, just with a phone call, they were able to get people down there to help them clean up their neighborhood. Not to do it for them, just help them. Now, my next challenge to those folks that are, all right, you need to organize. Get 3 or 4 of your neighbors, get a cup of coffee and say, we're just going to take back our 3 houses in a row, right?
Right.
We're going to beautify these 3 houses, and we're going to go out there and say, hey, I know you're an addict, but not in front of my house, but here, let me call someone for you, right?
Right.
Let me not kick you further down the street. If not, you can't do it here. Right? This is my block.
Absolutely.
You got to start taking it back that way, and whether you want help, we'll get you to help. If you don't want help, then move along because you can't do it here. And that's where they get that little stronghold right there. Going back to drug dealing is a supply and demand business, right? And we arrest, you've seen the shootout we had just 2 weeks ago, and thank God no police officers got hurt, and that was very violent. It was very over the board, gun battle.
Right.
And that was a force in the drug laws. That's what we do. But, what comes behind us when we leave Burbank Street and have a gun battle with people? Are the neighbors able to be sophisticated enough to go, you know what, this is our street. Let's just hold what these cops just got shot at for, and let's see if we can plant some trees and beautify that around that house, or get a hold of that landlord and say, get your house under control, or we're going to be down to City Hall tomorrow picketing for your house. And, people protest for everything nowadays. You should be protesting for your neighborhoods and out there picketing for it down in City Hall and saying, help us, help us, help us.
Right.
But I go back to that word momentum. I think we have some traction now. Let's see if we can spin that flywheel going in a positive direction. Like we said, it's going to take years, but one neighborhood at a time, one couple houses at a time, one grandma.
Step by step.
Yeah, exactly. And saving one life at a time. And let's get we're done talking about it. You see, everybody's putting resources into it now.
Right.
Steph, you talked about the dime bags, empty glassine bags standing on the sidewalk, and some needles and stuff like that throughout the neighborhoods that you walked. And you said, how can we clean that up? What can we do? The police can't do everything. We'll try our best, but we can't do everything. There's only so many resources. There's other agencies also, and I know people are going to want to throw me under the bus when I mention them, but the firemen, and obviously the police and firemen go back and forth all the time.
Yeah.
What are they doing? The firemen respond to some of these calls too. In the police world, we like to call them second responders as a joke, because they're always there second. We're the first responders.
That was Sergeant Matt Barnes.
But I've got cousins and aunts and uncles that are firemen, so I don't even want to hear it. But sincerely, I mean, I know there's a fire hall right on Clinton Avenue, right? Maybe they could get out and walk the neighborhoods and do some stuff like that. Maybe coordinate with the mayor on that, or
They got one on Hudson too, I think.
yeah, there's no reason they can't partake in this too, because it affects them, and it affects tax dollars with them responding to some of these calls too, to Narcan and do everything else.
Right.
So
right.
I mean, there's lots of different avenues we could take that maybe we're not thinking of right now, but maybe we need to bring in them in on the curve also.
Right. And we're all about it. We want to help you guys.
We're on the right side this time.
Yeah.
So going back to our command post terminology and the militaristic, if you will, and again, this ain't a military operation, but we just try to get the structure around it, right? We need to structure all the supporting cast too that goes along with this. And the supporting cast, we call them NGOs, non-government organizations, and that's right on our table of organization at the command post. We have 3 wings coming off it. One's law enforcement with our undercovers and uniforms and our overdose investigative teams that now go out to Ogden and Fairport should they have a fatal OD, that we send these teams out to help investigate like a homicide. And on the other 2 branches, there's a whole branch of preventions. What are we going to do about prevention? We start filling out that part of the table organization, and then of course the recovery side that you guys are so familiar with. Those are all part of our daily briefs of where can we send what occurred last night to the right resources to get something done, something different, something measurable.
Right. Why is everyone being so... Everyone's being so quiet today.
I'm not being quiet.
We'll keep talking.
I think it was the song you played during the
I know.
I'm still a little terrified right now. I don't know how it's gonna go down at the end of the show.
Next thing,
Stephanie, did you want to tell your admission that you told me when I first walked in the door?
Oh my
don't
gosh,
do it. Don't do it.
So, all right. So I've known
That's your
Officer
limitation.
Barnes for years. Like when I had a job, when I was doing good, I knew him. And then I fell into this, and he saw me becoming an addict. He saw it, and he had pulled me over, and I was with my friend, the cigarette man, Jerry, who passed away, R.I.P. Jerry. But I had just gone to cop, and I had 2 bundles, and I had like 10 bags of crack, and holy crap.
Here's the confession.
So we get pulled over, and I was hiding one of the bags of crack because I was going to keep an extra one and not give Justin one. And I was going to be like, I only got 9.
She is very honest.
So I forgot about the one in my pocket, and I was like, yes, I got him all hidden before he got to the car. And I didn't. I had the one in my pocket, and they found it, and I got arrested, and they kept asking me, is that all? Is that all? And I'm like, yes, that's it. Yes, that's it. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be in so much trouble because they're probably going to find it, and I'm going to do forever in jail. They didn't find it, though. Thank you, God. But I had to tell him today because I was like, I'm like, I got to tell him. This is just bad. I got to tell him. And I felt so much better.
There's your 9th step amends right there.
Right?
How about that?
Yeah. But, yeah, I used to cop right at the Pines of Parrington. I didn't always have to go to the city. And I could get crack, quite a few spots in Fairport. You don't always have to go to the city, and people don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point,
and
Steph.
East
I'm glad you
Rochester,
brought
too.
that up, because I think that's a misnomer of everyone thinks everything happens in the city, and that's just not true.
Right.
It's everywhere, and that's hopefully we want to hit that home to everyone, the listeners, and as we leave here, to anyone that'll listen to us from here on out, that it's not just an urban problem or a city of Rochester problem, it's a Metro Rochester problem.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. I grew up out in Churchville, Chili, and that's where it started for me. I got in a sports accident, and then there was people out there that had already started dibbling and dabbling with the heroin, and next thing I know, I was out of my prescription, and I was on my way out to the city. You know what I mean? But then that's when it really started getting bad, and being in the suburbs too. And after I would say probably the first 2 or 3 months of me using, I didn't have to go anywhere. I could go right to a park in North Chili, and I would be able to cop. I'd be fine. I'd be off sick. And
Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that, how accessible it is.
right, it's crazy.
And another thing too is, they've been around for a couple of years. I know our chief, Sam Farina, put in a couple of, you know, the pharmaceutical waste collection barrels that our police department, I know the sheriff has them at all the zones. Great thing. Here in our police department, I think I'm probably going to screw this number up, but I think it's over 20,000 pounds now of pharmaceutical waste
Wow.
Oh,
that
wow.
we've had turned in. That's 10 tons. And that's a lot of pills that are not accessible to the grandkids or
Wow,
to the
that's
kids or something like that.
crazy.
You think about that. And that's
Yeah.
such a simple, it's a low-cost item. Put a couple of barrels in your police department, and people come and they dump all sorts of pharmaceutical waste.
That's
Which is a
awesome.
good thing for the community.
Right. And you know, after my mother passed away, she had cancer and she had so many prescriptions of Oxycontin and Percocet.
Sure.
And that's when I really fell into addiction hard. Before I was a functioning addict, I would pop pills on the weekend. I could work during the week. And as soon as I made that switch over and started using heroin, it was a wrap. It was, you know, really quickly that I was homeless and, you know, not being able to live without finding drugs.
That's
Yeah, and
my
now
life,
the
too.
problem is the heroin, too, is being laced with, obviously, as you guys know, other things. And that's what part of the killing is being done by also.
Right. And there's so much now people don't even know about. Like we saw a girl today at one of our regular spots where we normally find someone behind shooting up, and I hadn't seen anyone, you know, she definitely wasn't shooting up heroin.
I wanted to give her a hug. That's how bad it felt. But I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I was going to scare her or what.
And it was just, you know, when people are flailing and talking to themselves, there's not really anything. I wasn't even sure what to do. You know, we left her lunches and socks and hats and gloves, but she wasn't ready for the help. We gave her information on who to call and where to get help, but she wasn't ready. And it's so hard leaving someone in that situation and knowing there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, I don't even know what she was on. I've never seen anyone have a response to
It looked like meth.
the drugs I was using like that. You know what I mean? And that was kind of like the first time I've really ever gotten in my own head being out there on Sundays, like seeing that, and I was like, man, what did she get her hands on? You know, and not that it made me want to use, but just like, holy smokes, you know. But then I think back, and I mean, there was plenty of times where I was shacked up behind the abandoned house on Ketchum Street, stuck like Chuck, you know what I mean? So, but it was scary, man, because she was like making them noises and
Oh, yeah.
flailing around, not in like a seizure way, but just, you know, going crazy. Like it was just really strange mannerisms, and I had never really encountered that even in my 6-7 years.
A lot of the
homelessness.
addicts, they got mental problems too.
Yeah.
You know, we gotta start taking care of that too and looking out for those situations and try to help them people too, because that's why a lot of people are using, is because they just can't understand themselves and they can't figure themselves out.
I think if you look at law enforcement, and we're looking at these statistics. I just got a report this morning, ironically, on what we refer to as mental hygiene arrests. So that's when first people are having such a breakdown that they're going to be in danger to themselves or a third party. We effect, if you will, an arrest. It's not really an arrest, and we take them to the ED, and they're talking to a psych doctor for the next 24 hours, 48 hours, or however long the doctor deems it necessary. But you look at those statistics and how those are climbing. It's amazing. You look at the opioid abuse and how that is climbing. And then I'll be as frank as possible. Let's look at suicides and how that is climbing in our community. And you can't tell me there's not a correlation between the three. We are having a social breakdown right in front of our eyes, and it's being represented in many different statistics. And obviously, the opioid fight's the biggest one because we're losing people at such a drastic rate. But you know, we don't really measure the suicides and how many of those are related to the same causes. And like you said, you know, it's all interrelated. Mental health is interrelated with opioid overdose or any addiction, as we know, right?
Right.
And then the suicide rates. Who knows how many suicides are mixed in with opioid overdoses, and opioid overdoses, you know. It was truly a suicide, you know, and how are you ever going to measure that? But you look at the charts; they're all trending, you know, and something's seriously gone wrong in our society.
You know, another thing we haven't spoke or touched on yet either, and not to drag anyone into this, but let's call a spade a spade. I mean, there's an over-prescribed doses of these pills.
Oh my
and
gosh,
they're not done by the addict, they're not done by law enforcement, they're not done by anyone but one set of people. And I think that has to be addressed also. I don't know how you address that, but I think that has to be addressed.
Right. And, you know, they push pills. The big farm pushes pills, and the doctors just prescribe, you know.
All money.
Remember, Neff?
Not about bodies, about money.
Remember, they prescribed Sierra, as a matter of
Oh my
fact.
gosh! Oh, I got so mad. My niece, 15 years old, she got, what was it, out of her arm? She got something surgically removed from her arm.
Yes.
This child didn't even really take any Tylenol afterwards, but they prescribed her Percocet 10s.
Yeah.
Percocet 10s to a 15-year-old.
And
like,
we
get
wouldn't
out
let
of
her
here.
take it, obviously. Absolutely not.
No, of
and she
course.
didn't need it.
But you know how many people out there, and it goes back to the education and
Right,
worth
right.
a ton, right?
Yeah, you got
How many
it.
parents assume because it's a prescription that this is the right thing to do because a medical doctor issued it, and we should have trust and faith in our medical doctors. But what are the causes? We don't know. But Sergeant Barnes is a frank person, and he calls it like it is. And
Right.
right now we have laws in New York State where people cannot doctor shop anymore. There's a database that has to be filled out by medical doctors, so you can't overprescribe. Or I can't go to one doctor, go to my next doctor, go to a dentist, go to a veterinarian, and,
Right.
and get the opioids. But so that we've taken care of that. The next step, and medical doctors are starting to talk as frank as Sergeant Barnes is. I sit with the ED staff. I sit with the medical doctor. They're talking just as frank as we are right now about what can they do. So the whole idea has changed. And just a few short years ago, a medical doctor was 100% responsible for you. If you left with pain, they felt that they weren't fulfilling their obligation as a medical doctor if you left their office. So they were prescribing the pain medication, over-prescribing, or it's the big drug dealers, pushing it out there. Who knows? But the fact is now they're openly talking about it, and I think it's because people are being frank. People are holding each other accountable. People are understanding. And I don't think we should be at the, if we knew the true cause, people ask me all the time, what's the number one reason people are becoming addicted so much? I'm like, if I knew, I'd be a billionaire. That's
Right.
not the problem,
Yeah.
It's everybody's such individuals and how they get hooked in and how they get all these opioids. But my wife left with shoulder surgery with 80 pills, and I think we took a half of one, right? She took half of one.
The truth comes out.
The truth comes- yeah. I 80 pills, what do you got? Prescribe 5 days worth, and then if I still need it because the pain's so, then let's have a consultation. Let's sit down and talk to a counselor and find there's other ways. Maybe I still need to be prescribed pills. I have friends that are mine that have been on these pills for years, but that's their pain, and they're not addicted to it. I don't understand how they're not, but they tell me that they're living it. But that's in consultation with a medical doctor all the time, and well, we never did. We used to issue 80 pills and let them out the door. See you later,
Right.
What you don't use, flush down the toilet and make all the fish in the sea happy, I guess.
Right.
Think about the numbers that Matt mentioned. If they weren't the drop-off centers, where are all those pills really going? We all know where they're going.
Right.
Exactly.
Throw them in our water system and wonder why, got three-headed trout in the lake.
Right?
It's
Good
just,
point.
There's so many pills out there. You would be, little old ladies are driving up to the police stations with Wegmans bags filled
Yes, they are.
with pills.
Wow.
Good for them.
That
Barely can lift
is-
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something's
It's
broken.
insane, but
It
it's
is.
really
It's
good that we're able to turn those in.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right. All right, guys. Well, we got to wrap it up. We are so thankful that you guys came and joined us today.
Yes, we are.
And we love you now.
Uh-huh.
We're so thankful.
Oh, what do you mean now?
Now,
We didn't used to love you.
Stephanie.
I definitely was not on your guys' side, just to let you know.
you let me up the door.
But you are now.
Up the door.
But now I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
But there's a bunch of firemen waiting for Matt out in the parking lot.
Get off your butts and do something.
We just really support what you guys are doing, and
Absolutely.
anything we can do to help, we're on board. Something needs to be done, and we're finally seeing action, and we love it. That's what Be the Change is all about.
Exactly.
So thank you, Rochester, for listening.
I just wanted to do a shout out to Reach House today. I know they're listening to us, so I just wanted to say, hey, everybody.
All right, guys, enjoy.
Steph, thanks for having us.
Oh my gosh, yes, it was great. I would love to do it again. Enjoy the week, everyone. We'll be back next Sunday, and we'll be throwing in some statistics of our past 2-week cleanups.
Be the change, Rochester. Be the change.